but I started as I was an enlisted man.
Mm-hmm.
And at the age of 19, I was a corporal of Marines at a Forward Observer Squad. And I was and this was for a 105 artillery outfit, Charlie Battery, 5th Gun Battalion in the Pacific. And it may be of interest to you.
Everything is.
I had my squad was composed of 4 Sioux Indians.
Really? That is
And
interesting.
they were so-called talkers. And so they would transmit fire directions and so forth as passed on by the forward observers in their own language, Sioux,
Mm-hmm.
which the Japanese could not understand.
That's
It
a good
was-
code right there.
It was unbreakable code.
Yeah.
It was started by the Navajo, but anyway, by the time I got involved, we were using Sioux, and we were in training. We were training, and I was a good squad leader.
When was this?
Pardon?
When was this?
This was 1944. We were training up on the volcano island, the Big Island, Hawaii, up in the lava fields.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently I was effective as squad leader to the point that I was selected to go back to the States for officer candidate school, officer training. And I did not want to do that. I wanted to stay with my outfit as we went into my artillery outfit was the only Marine outfit that went into the Philippines with General MacArthur. But inconsequentially, I begged the battalion commander to please let me stay with my outfit. I wanted to go into combat. He told me I would be much more effective as a second lieutenant, so they sent me back to the States, and then they sent me back to college.
So you
So
had to learn a little. All
here I
over
was,
again.
a hotshot Marine wanting to fight, and I ended up the war in college. So very, very unhappy. But I still had the desire at that time to become an officer of Marines, which to me was the apex of what a young man could accomplish. 19 years old, and so the war ended. I finished. I stayed in the. I got out of the Corps to finish college, at which point I went right back into the Marine Corps because I did receive a commission. So there you go. There's a story from
short.
your first officer of the day. Huh? I finished college at Colgate and immediately accepted a commission in the Marine Corps as a second lieutenant.
So, you said that you wanted to fight,
Yeah.
but they pulled you out to go to officer training school.
Yeah,
But I
yeah.
guess you were able to redeem yourself because.
Well, there wasn't any fighting going on, but I just had a natural attraction to the Marine Corps, and so we did not anticipate the war, the Korean War. The trouble spots of the world at that time were Israel. It was thought that possibly the Muslim countries would attack Israel, and we anticipated we'd be fighting there. The relations between Russia and the United States were very bad. So we were learning Russian tactics while I was,
to fight them.
that's where we thought it would happen. And then in Indonesia, there were troubles. So we did not know where we would fight. Now, mind you, here we are, young officers in an organization that is known to be first to fight. I'm talking United States Marine Corps. And we wanted to fight. So when the news of the Korean War broke out, we welcomed it. And I was at the beach at Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, and the word came through, and the first thing that every one of us, all the young lieutenants, without missing a single one of us, Jesus, do you think it'll last long enough so we can get into it? And this was our thinking. And we were delighted when President Truman said that we will enter this war on the side of the South Koreans. Quite frankly, we didn't give a damn what the cause was.
You just wanted to fight?
We figured whoever these North Koreans are, we'll go out and clean them up and get a little experience. So it's most people don't realize this facet of the Korean War. After President Truman declared our involvement, we shipped all the Marines that we could find out to California to form the 1st Marine Division. It was very difficult. It was virtually impossible to find enough Marines to reconstitute the 1st Marine Division. And therefore, the president said, call up the reserves. And suddenly, there were thousands of youngsters who were 18, 19-year-old kids who would join the reserves, possibly to get a few extra bucks for Saturday night drill, and with the the ability to attract women wearing the Marine Corps uniform.
Of course.
And none of them had any thought of going to war. A few of them had been through summer training. Most of those that I picked up had not received much training beside putting on your uniform, learning the manual of arms. So all the Marines from Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, shipped out to Camp Pendleton in California, and in effect became cadre for the newly formed 7th Marine Regiment, which was mine. And I reported aboard, and I had I was given the mortars, the 60 mortars, in Baker Company 7th Marines. And I went over to see the Marines that were mine. They were already assigned. I had nothing to say about who would qualify. And they were a rather sad-looking group.
Because they're the reserves, so that they weren't necessarily trained.
They were just
well.
called up out of nowhere and said, you will report to 1st Marine Division at Camp Lejeune, and you will be assigned to an organization. This was on, I forgot dates, but I had from the time I first stepped in front of my Marines, I had 2 weeks to train them, to put them aboard ship, and to go to the what turned out to be the invasion of Korea, South Korea, through the Incheon landing. Now, what I did with that 2 weeks, I tried to get the people into condition to the best that I could by running them up and down through the hills of Camp Pendleton. At the same time, teaching them tactical maneuver, tactical movement. Just give them an idea of
what they'll be getting into.
Say again.
Of what they'll be getting into?
Just how they would respond to combat orders. I had no time to give them training and military courtesy and discipline. I didn't have time to tell them the proper means of communication. Very little about calling me sir or lieutenant, as one of them put it so succinctly. What difference does it make what we call you? We all know you're the boss. It was to the horror of our regulars, our NCOs. You understand, NCOs were the corporals and the sergeants. They are the backbone of any outfit. These were all pretty well experienced United States Marines. Many of them had fought up through the Pacific, and so they were combat experienced.
I'm wondering, how you were actually able to equip the Marines with the ability, maybe they're a little afraid to go over to Korea and to actually fight, whereas the officers, your kind of responsibility is to coach them up.
Sure, I understand what you're saying. It was not a question of whether we doubted if we could do it or not. We would do it, and we did do it. We put them on unreasonable training schedule just to ram it into them as quickly as we could. The important things for them to learn were that, one, instantaneous response to their leaders, which could be the NCOs, the corporals and sergeants, and to their officers. It was perhaps difficult for them to get this to their heads. Some of them, let's take a kid who had a tough time at home. When mom told him to get up, it was time to get up and go to school. Yeah, Mom.
You straighten them out pretty quickly.
We applied very harsh methods so that they would quickly learn that when I or one of the NCOs said, do this, it was not a question of I'll get to it. It is you will right now.
So when you actually shipped out and got into Korea, they're hopefully better prepared to deal with that situation.
When, first of all, we spent 2 weeks aboard ship, at which time we broke out our weapons, and we had weapons training aboard ship. Mind you, here we are, we're showing young men how to fire machine guns, maintain machine guns. Many of them had never even seen one. Showed them the use of hand grenades, how to prepare and throw a grenade. All of this off the fantail of ships on the way. So that by the time we landed, we had the rudiments down. Not to anyone's satisfaction, but we were committed. The 1st Marine Division was committed to the capture of Seoul. We landed in a place called Incheon, And fortunately, we did not land under enemy fire. We came ashore and we did uh, just utilitarian work, help move gear, get everything ready for the outfits that were ahead of us in fighting. Till the first time we went into the attack. And here is where our lack of experience showed. It is, for the best of trained troops, first time under fire. You might describe it as a horrifying experience. The man next to you, say, gets his belly shot out. He goes down, and you're next to a guy whose intestines are spilled out, and he's screaming and yelling. And you have never seen such a thing, perhaps. Now, mind you, these are 18, 19-year-old kids. Perhaps you've never even seen a dead person in your whole life. Well, all of a sudden, the guy you were just talking to is a mass of bloody pulp. Now you've got to follow the orders of some big son of a bitch who's telling you, God damn it, keep moving. Keep moving, keep moving. And for the most part, we did. The men kept moving. And look, it was my first time under fire. And here I am. We get up to a dike, a rice paddy. And I am my head is over the dike. Next to me is a Marine, and I am looking to spot a machine gun, the enemy machine gun, so I can call in mortar on it. And next to me, closer than we are, the kid next to me, his head is splattered, and he goes down. And I look down, and then the kid who had been right next to me is now just a bloody, his head is a bloody pulp. That fear that is universal came at me, and it could have, at that moment, could have paralyzed me. But fortunately, I was a thoroughly well-trained leader of Marines. I knew that it was my function to keep this outfit going, to do what we're paid to do. So I just forced myself to take command of myself. That was my first
Real
terror, feeling of terror, but I overcame it. And what happens is that in that instant, the men see that no matter what has happened, the lieutenant is still giving orders and is still not cowering underneath the dike. He's got his head up, he's checking out the situation. So we overcame that situation, and we moved properly, and we took our objective that day, moved on forward, and it was for the first day of combat. It was not a terrible experience. We lost people, had they been trained properly, would have moved differently. Case in point, here's one where I had taken on one of my lads and made him my runner, and we were pinned down pretty badly by we're fighting in North Koreans though. And they had us under heavy fire. So I was moving my people across an open area, doing all the right things, putting down, suppressing fire, distracting fire, all that, and then giving the men the word, move out one at a time. And the way they would move, just get up, zigzag. Comes down to this lad, Nichols, fine young man, and it's his turn. He's the last one. All right, Nichols, get ready. Okay, lad. And he starts, and then he stops, and he turns around, and he goes back, and on his way, they got him right in the chest, and he fell back into my arms. You know, and the reason why it happened was that he was not conditioned to instantly follow orders. Once he got started, he hesitated. So there was poor Nichols getting a case of lack of preparation. Well, we lost some more men like that. For the next 5 days, we fought outside of Seoul, fighting north against the remnants of the North Korean army. And so, in effect, we were getting combat training under enemy fire. Most effective kind of training you can possibly get.
This is before the Chinese entered?
Oh yeah, we're still fighting the North Koreans, but they were dissipating. So, as I say, those 5 days of exposure was outstanding combat training. We finished those 5 days. My people felt as though they had been, as they say, blooded, and they were confident. They had confidence in themselves. They knew that the next time they ran into the enemy, they would be ready, and they would know what to do. So that ends that chapter of fighting against the North Koreans. We pushed them out of Seoul. We pushed them back across the border. As far as we were concerned, the war was over. The powers that be, and I'm not involved in this. All I am is a second lieutenant, feeling pretty damn good about the job that we had done, and ready for more if more came. Word came that we would go up into North Korea now and clean out, eliminate the remnants of the North Korean army. In the doing, the Chinese expressed their extreme displeasure and warned us that the United States is not supposed to send its troops adjacent to the Chinese border. Now, history will tell you that at that point in time, the communist Chinese had assumed command of China itself. They were allied with the Russians, and the Russians and the United States were head to head at each other. It was to the Russian benefit that the Chinese Communist Army either defeat or at least embarrass the United States Army, the United States Armed Forces. So, in spite of the warnings that were given to us, General MacArthur, Supreme Commander of the American forces in Korea, and subsequently Supreme Commander of all the United Nations forces, said, we will proceed to the Yalu River, which is the border with China, and we will occupy all the territory that we overcome, and our purpose will be to eliminate the North Korean army so that it won't exist anymore, and most likely we will unify the two Koreas now, North and South, so there will be one nation. The Chinese said that if you do so at our displeasure. And if you proceed, we will send sufficient forces down from across China into North Korea to stop you and your advances, and furthermore, to destroy you. Supreme Headquarters in Tokyo, General MacArthur's people, refused to accept the warning, and we were ordered to proceed as fast as militarily possible to up to the Yellow River, to the border with China. The 1st Marine Division was assigned the central part of North Korea. We were to move up through an area called Chosin Reservoir. On our left, to the west of us, the American 8th Army had moved up the west coast of Korea. To our right, a conglomeration of American and South Korean forces moved up the east coast, both on the east coast and the west coast. The objective was achieved. The Yellow River was reached, at which point the Chinese army hit with force that no one had conceived.
So they weren't bluffing.
So
They were not bluffing.
they were not bluffing, and they hit the American and South Korean forces with literally hundreds of thousands of Chinese soldiers who were ready to fight. They drove the Americans on the west coast, the 8th Army. They drove them back hundreds of miles, back past Seoul, worst defeat ever inflicted upon an American fighting force. Over on the East Coast, the effect was essentially the same, but the South Koreans and Americans who went up there were not in such numbers. In the middle, in the central part of Korea, the Chinese hit the 1st Marine Division. A little history. The Chinese hit us, 1st Marine Division, on 2 November. We had occupied a piece of territory in a village called Tsunami. Prior to that, the South Korean army had probed as far north as they could and were being shoved back by the Chinese.
Why don't you tell the story about how the Chinese drove back, and then I'd like to maybe get more of your personal reactions in addition to the stories that you're
All right, let me tell you then. Tsunami, the South Koreans had pushed up the central part of North Korea. The Chinese had come at them and driven them back. We were told to go up and reinforce the South Koreans, stop the withdrawal. On 2 November at midnight, we had taken positions. My battalion took 3 hills, set up 3 perimeters, and the Chinese hit us in 4th force with the intention, as they said, of destroying these Marines, because the prestige of the Marine Corps was such that should the 1st Marine Division be destroyed or seriously damaged, it would do great damage to the prestige of the United States. So they hit us for the first time, Chinese. And they came at us that night and threw everything they had. And it was one hell of a fight. They came at us in our, our outpost. We withdrew slightly. They came at us. I'll tell you their style. They would come up as close as they could and then go into an assault, which meant that they would send squads armed with burp guns, and they would come charging in at our first lines, and didn't matter how many casualties they took. Those who went down were followed by a new wave. Many of the new wave had no weapons. They just picked it up from those who had been hit. And they just kept, by force of numbers, trying to push us out of our positions. As I say, it was one hell of a fight, and that went on for hours. I ran into, I had my mortar set up behind the company command post. They came up at us. I followed them, pushed them back, and in the doing, saw that there was a railroad tunnel down in the valley, and they were using that as shelter, and they were coming out of that railroad tunnel and setting up a firing line to hit the battalion, which was down in the valley. This is a target, what we call a target of opportunity. One of the great moments in the life of a second lieutenant. So I set up a gun, and I just am going down that line that they are setting up out of the tunnel, and I just cleaned them out. And I've got to tell you, I mentioned to you the moments of terror. There are moments in combat, moments of exaltation. That was one of them. Mm-hmm. And so these things, you go from one end of the one side of the spectrum to the other emotionally. The next morning after that fight, where the 24th Chinese Division was to release information that they had done irreparable damage to the 1st Marine Division and our own perimeter around Baker Company, 7th Marines, we counted in excess of 200 Chinese bodies. And we had given an inch. And from there on in, we kept following, chasing them up the valley to the Chosin Reservoir. I know you want to get moving on this. 27 November. We had been warned by the peasantry, if you want to call them that, the people living in the mountains, the North Koreans, that the Chinese were setting up many is the way they described it. And they were waiting for us to reach a certain point, at which time they would attack the 1st Marine Division with full intent, with, the numbers vary, but at perhaps a ratio of 10 to 1.
Chinese to American?
10 to 1. So if we had 20,000 Marines, they would have 200,000. And their purpose is, again, to destroy the 1st Marine Division. Well, I saw so many instances of the best count. There is no accurate count of how many of them came at us. The best description, you've heard of, everybody who sees this, knows anything about the Marine Corps, will have heard of Chesty Puller, the incomparable Chesty Puller, who had one of the regiments at the Chosin Reservoir. And when asked how many Chinese are there up there? He said, we got a whole shitload full of them. And that was...
That summed it up?
Huh?
That summed it up?
That summed it up, because it is difficult for someone who was not there to envision the hordes. They were called hordes as well, as they came across the fields of attack, and it seemed to us that they had no regard for life. We'd put machine guns on them. We'd concentrate mortar and artillery fire on them, and they keep on coming and keep on coming. The only thing that saved us was that if we could hold them off during the night, in the daytime, they were not effective at all in the attack because we had air support. And our air could control the fighting during the day. So the solution we found, the only way we were going to get out of there is because we had gone so far. The Chinese then closed us off. They had us surrounded. The only way we were going to get out of there and fight our way to the sea, where the Navy waited for us to float us out of that place, was attack, attack, attack. And so we would attack all day. They would attack all night. They had more people than we did, and they were figuring by attrition. They would wear us out. Now here became a serious problem once again. We had leadership. We had to keep the men as alert as possible under these horrific circumstances. Probably other people have gone into the matter of the cold, 20, 30 below zero, blizzards, climbing the mountains, fighting, all of these things for which we were not trained. You know, there we were, and so we just accepted these problems and kept right on fighting. It was not without cost. My rifle company went into its first fight against the Chinese on 2 November with 215 men. Over a period of, what, 5 weeks perhaps, constant combat, we received perhaps 75 or so replacements. These replacements came from artillery supply, et cetera, et cetera. But let's say that there were 300 names, Marines, on Baker Company's roster. Our last fight, the last assault we made, I was the only officer there. We had a rifle company of 30 Marines.
Wow.
The end of that fight, I wasn't there, and we lost 3 others killed. So the final muster, after Chosin Reservoir, was Baker Company 7th Marines, mustered 27 men. And that was it, out of, they say, 300. And those numbers were not unusual. They were, that was pretty much the situation. But here's, and now I go into my Marine Corps paean. Even at the end, now here I am, I was a junior officer. Now I'm leading this assault. And my company of Marines is still fighting, like Baker Company 7th Marines, and they never, ever stopped. They just kept right on fighting. I say this with my heart bursting with pride.
Yeah,
huh?
it should be.
When you're fighting, you no longer, you might go in filled with patriotism, and when you're in battle, you're not fighting for your country. You're fighting for your outfit. You're fighting for the guys in the hole with you. You're fighting for the guys who will move up with you. And you're fighting for the guy, if you go down, he's going to make damn sure that you get out of there. He's going to make sure, is when I went down. You know, they took the objective, but then they came back, slid me on a poncho, and dragged me out of there. So it's a matter of family. That's and you love each other as family, and I mean love. There's to this day, here's 60-some years later, you know, I'm still in touch with some of the Marines that I led. I'll give you an incident that is in total contrast of the first, when I told you about Nichols getting killed because he stood up and he hesitated. My company commander, Joe Kurseva, and I were standing together. Now, Joe and I had become fast, close friends, professionally. We had great respect for each other, fighting. And right at the very end, Joe is telling me that I should take my platoon and try to flank the enemy position. And Joe came to about here on me. As we spoke, Joe, I saw a dark spot appear in Joe's forehead, right underneath his helmet line. And Joe's eyes went dead. And he started to crumble. And I grabbed Joe so that he wouldn't fall, and I lowered him into the snow. And I wanted to stop beside Joe, get on my knees, and pray. We were on the attack. I had to move forward and get the attack moving, even though I just lost perhaps my closest friend, right? I had to leave him, but that's what you do.
It's hard to...
Yeah. I think of Joe sometimes. I don't feel any intense sorrow. I don't feel, Jesus, you son of a bitch, why didn't you just, you know. I did what I was supposed to do. And so we took the goddamn position from the Chinese. That's what we were supposed to do. So, yeah, the personal attachments are right now. And I'm telling you about Joe Kurseva. It hurts like hell. But I know damn well that Joe would be, he'd say, oh, God damn it, you just did what you're supposed to be doing, for Christ's sakes, you know? So that's what it is. It's personal, but at the same time, your first, okay, as an officer of Marines, my first obligation is to my Marines. And whatever it works for, is to their benefit is what I'm supposed to be doing. There's a great old saying, you know. I don't think that the Marines own it, but it's pertinent. You take care of your men, and your men will take care of you.
I think that applies to everything.
Yeah. But at least, as I say, we're still, those of us who survived are still as close as a family.
So how does that, like, when you look back on your experience fighting,
Yeah.
you know, in your civilian life,
Yeah.
back in the United States, how do you think that experience really impacted you? How you kind of went about your life afterwards, and your perspective on life, how that changed?
You know, I could give you some noble answers to that.
I don't want noble, I want...
But, no, I could. But, you know, the thing of it is, I went through a extremely difficult circumstance. And I got through it okay. one of the reasons I got through it is because I am, I'm very proud. I'm proud as hell that I was selected to be an officer of Marines. You know, that's the epitome, okay, for especially for a 19, 20-year-old kid. The other thing is that I know that I am one tough son of a bitch. And there ain't nothing that can beat me down. Because I've been there and I've done it. And it's the men I know who have been through circumstances such as what I've been through feel the same thing. You know, bottom line is, we're proud as hell.
So, when you face a difficult circumstance now, or in the past 60 years, you kind of think back on the war like,
Yeah.
I got through the war. This isn't really. This doesn't compare.
Yeah, you know, I can boil it down to a couple of, and we do it a lot. What can they do to me?
Yeah.
You know, really. So, as I say, it boils down to if I were to enumerate, list my emotions, I'd start with pride. Mm-hmm. Not conceit, but pride. You remember that outfit I described up front? These people who didn't know how to put their uniforms on. Mm-hmm. Now they're amongst the finest fighting Marines that the Corps has ever put into the field. So I'm proud of that. I'm proud of my part. I'm proud of them that they did it. And then the next thing is that there's a great line written by a Marine colonel who, on retirement, when I was an enlisted man, he was my superior. And he says, I take one step backward, retiring. I continue to look with tolerant scorn on the rest of the world, for we are United States Marines. Mm-hmm. You know? And that, you know, I'm an 86-year-old son of a bitch, but I'm a United States Marine. So I guess I start off by enumerating my first emotion is pride, and I end up with pride. Mm-hmm. I am very proud of what I did. Let me put in there somewhere gratitude. Gratitude for, one, the fact that we have a country such as ours that gives us such men as Perkins and Burris and Gallipo and all those great fighting Marines. And it gave me the opportunities that were, my mom and dad came from the old country so that their children could take advantage or find and take advantage of the opportunities that are presented here. I'm sitting here thinking that, you know, my cousins over in the British Isles, great guys, but ain't none of them had what I've had. That becomes because I'm an American. So, you mean specific incidents?
Specific incidents, or maybe, you know, fellow Marines that fell, or.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Here's mixed emotions. There's one. Jesus, the last casualty that suffered by my rifle company, and this happened minutes after I went down. They had taken that last machine gun that was stopping us, and then they kept right on going. Now I'm down on the deck in the snow. I didn't even see this, but I hear of it. And we keep right on going, see if they can catch any Chinese running away. And one of them, his name was Kowalski, one of them gets up on the skyline. Stupid son of a bitch. And they get him. They killed him. And that to me is the saddest of all the casualties. You know, here we had taken the position, and he knew better. He knew better. I mean, you know, he'd been through all this time of combat, intense combat. Knew damn well that he shouldn't have done. He shouldn't have paused on the skyline. And the Chinaman turned around and killed him. And that is one that when I think over the situation, I wish I had been there to kick Kowalski in the ass and tell him to get off the squat, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But you think of those guys think of mainly with love, you know. I guess that's the best way to describe. And
Yeah, that's a good way. So, you know, over the years, obviously, you've probably very knowledgeable of other wars, and a lot has been said about the fact that Korean War is this forgotten war.
yeah.
That, you know, after World War II, people were kind of sick of dealing with it. Could you possibly talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Look, we went over there. We fought one hell of a good fight. As far as I'm concerned, we won. We did what we were supposed to have done. I know a lot of people had their lives torn up and disarranged and had some miserable times. And point to me a war that where victory or defeat was not mangled by the politicians. You know, they get their hands on it, and it doesn't matter. Look what they did in World War II, which was a resounding victory. Look how they screwed that up. And so, when they say forgotten war, I think of the great guys, great Marines that I fell in ranks with. Huh? Where in the name of anywhere do you have opportunities like that, huh? Jesus, the guys I could name to you, you know, are just outstanding people that they're not forgotten to me. I love them. I think of them, I love them. And I think that's reciprocal. And I hear people pissing and moaning about it. We weren't appreciated and all that kind of stuff. Well, my choice is to say that, here, let me put it to you this way. Cynical. People come up to me and say, thank you for your service. And I say to them, I appreciate it, but you just don't understand what a great time it was. There I am. A proud moment of my life is when I see the effect of 100,000 North Koreans who escaped escaped the oppression of the Chinese and the North Korean Communist government, came out with 1st Marine Division because we cleared the way for them. It was not our objective. I can recount only one specific, as we had fought down to one of the garrison towns, and mind you, the masses of the Koreans who were trying to escape with us coming out, they were a terrible problem. They cluttered up the road, the main supply route. But to the best of our ability, considering tactical involvements, we did give them full consideration. came into the little town, Hagaroo, and our people were dragging. We were beat. And a truck pulled up, and in it it was filled with rations, and it was intended for the North Korean refugees. And I saw them start to line up, and suddenly burst through a group of South Korean soldiers. Now, these guys were supposed to be our allies. They were not very well trained. They were not trained at all. They saw an opportunity to take those rations for themselves. And they climbed up on the truck, and without an order being given, my Marines climbed up on that truck, and by means of rifle butts, they kicked those South Korean renegades off and simultaneously set up a line so that the refugees could come over and get their rations for a while. I had to pull my people off because we had an assignment, but that was, as I look upon it, that was a very small, but a significant gesture toward those people who came out. There's another part of this too, that when we were moving north, came up to surrounding a town called Udamni, and the people up in the hills were coming to us and revealing Chinese positions and giving us intelligence about what they were hearing and observing about the Chinese tactically when they were, and they told us that, and they would say, Chinese, Chinese, many, many, and then they would say, well, they come at you, you know. So they were very helpful to us. Yeah,
so there's some humanity then during war, it seems like. Even during war, you spot out those. I mean, not necessarily, you know, when your men made sure those rations went to the North Koreans. You know?
Yeah, you know, Americans are pushovers. You know, for the unfortunate. You know, you see pictures of the wars, and you see the American troops giving the little kids candy and stuff like that. That's what they are. To give you an idea, I took a patrol out one day, way up in the hills, and I come upon this farmhouse, I think, and I came up to it, and with one of my, I had an interpreter with me, and we came up, and the interpreter knocked on the door, and the door opened, and inside was this family cowering in fear. And I went in with the interpreter, tried to explain to them that we meant no harm. And my men are digging into their gear for candy and giving it to the little kids. And, you know, it was watching them, the Korean family change from fear just to a relief. But this is so common. You know, I mean, I can't say it was common to me. I didn't have this happen every day, but things like that. But those were my few experiences with the North Korean people, and I've heard some great stories about, great success stories about what had transpired in their lives after they got out of there, and there's a whole bunch of miracles there too. So anyway, enough of that.
I'd like to get your idea of what you think the legacy of the Korean War veterans have on America and military and people in general. It's a loaded question, I know.
Yeah, legacy, geez, you know. Legacy to me is see, I'm talking as a regular, I'm a pro. That's what I did. And the rest of it was a letdown after that. I had to get out of the Corps because I couldn't get my trigger finger working again. But I look back, and I was in Seoul a couple of decades back, and it was a great feeling seeing that the mad traffic jams in a place where when we were there, and I went through it prior, the traffic jams were tanks running into supply trucks, you know, and the town had been leveled, and now it is a conglomerate of skyscrapers and people running all over the place, bumping into each other. So we know that.
That's your legacy.
Well, yeah, if so. A few Korean people I know have expressed their gratitude toward me. I say thank you, and they say thank you. That's it. I'm not going to tell you that, geez, didn't we do a wonderful thing? Had we been called into Indonesia or any other place, you know, it was, once again, I'm speaking as a professional soldier, United States Marine, and so I got called up for duty, and I'm damn proud of the way I did my duty. There.
That's great. One last question.
Okay.
As I said, you know, the whole idea of these interviews is to kind of get your experience and your thoughts on this project that we're doing and on your experience in Korea. And I'm wondering if you could maybe provide a message or a couple lines, something that you'd like to transpire to future generations of children and adults who will be doing information on Korea and trying to find out a little bit more that they might not know, even soldiers that are coming home now. Maybe if you could offer some words of advice or a message, or.
That is difficult. That is very difficult. Once again, I express myself as a professional Marine. I would say well, look, I was out at Camp Pendleton a couple of months ago, and talking to the Marines who are about to shove off for Afghanistan. And they said to me, as a guy who fought at Chosin Reservoir, geez, I don't know how you guys did that, fighting in those mountains 30 below zero, blah, 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 blah. And I said, when we did that, we were not trained for cold weather fighting. We were not trained to fight in mountains. The only thing we were trained to do is to go out and kill the bastards. And you will do the same. I don't think that's the, I don't think that's what you're looking for. I don't have any high moral response. I'll go back again to what, maybe 5 minutes ago. You asked me what my emotions were, and I said pride. Pride that I functioned as a damn good United States Marine. Pride that there is a Marine Corps. And gratitude. Gratitude that we have the United States of America. That we're sitting here because we have the greatest country in the world. We're fortunate to be born here, to have this. When I say gratitude, I thank God that I could do something to forward the purpose of this country and circumstances. Contrast my family of 6 to that family that I mentioned on a patrol up there, you know?
The House of
Yeah.
Marines that you are.
Yeah, so, yeah, I don't know if that's any kind of an answer, but I'm scraping, I'm
That's fine,
scraping
that's
my
great.
brain trying to come up with one.
Well, Lieutenant,
That's
I
it?
appreciate you
Aye,
coming.
aye.
It's been a pleasure having you.
Okay, my lad.
This Ambassador for Peace medal that was given by the government of the Republic of Korea.
Yeah,
This is by the Ministry of Patriots and Veterans Affairs and the Korean Veterans Association.
yeah.
And if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to place this medal that they have given us to you around your neck.
Ooh, look at that. Ooh, isn't
I
that
see
a
you're
fancy-
decorated, but I'm sure you wouldn't mind
That's a fancy one, huh?
having another medal.
Oh.
It says Korean War Veteran Honor in Korean.
Oh. Well, thank you.
All right, and again, thank you very much.